What's up, everyone? Welcome to the FAA podcast. Logan will be on shortly. We got a boatload of stuff to go through, including some XFL news, college football, NFL news, and of course, what y'all came to see the Big 12 season preview that will take most of the show. So let's dive in here with the XFL news. Interesting. The IFL, the Indoor Football League to XFL, IFL to XFL Combine is going to be held at the IFL Championship on August 4th. That's in Henderson, Nevada, as part of an IFL Championship weekend. So this just puts us another step closer toward a possible IFL XFL partnership in which teams can transfer players between the two leagues. This is what I've kind of wanted the XFL to do with the NFL. Obviously, there's only 8 teams right now in the XFL. The IFL has, I believe, 12, 14, something like that, with plans to expand in 2024, I think. So eventually, it seems like we're starting to build the foundations. People are putting the money into these minor leagues where we can have a minor league professional football system for the first time ever, which I've been wanting for quite a while. So very intrigued at to see how that goes, but we'll keep an eye on what happens with the IFL and the XFL. College football news, major news out of Northwestern. Head coach Pat Fitzgerald has been fired amid the hazing scandal that is going on right now with the Wildcats program. And it's open season right now on the Northwestern football program. The transfer portal, not sure who the head coach is going to be now. I mentioned on Friday, luckily at that point in time, it was just a 2-week suspension during the off season here that it really wasn't going to affect the season. And now this came down yesterday. Just crazy stuff coming out of Northwestern right now. We'll stay tuned to see who they do figure out to be the head coach. But until then, Pat Fitzgerald gone and out as the head coach of Northwestern University. The UAC, Logan brought this up, sent this to me. The UAC, the United Athletic Conference, is a merger of what used to be the Atlantic Sun and the WAC, Western Athletic Conference. The two teams are the leagues that joined into the UAC are potentially planning a jump to the FBS, the entire conference to the FBS. So the teams that are in this conference now: Abilene Christian, Austin P, Central Arkansas, Eastern Kentucky, North Alabama, Southern Utah, Stephen F. Austin, Tarleton State, Utah Tech, and then in 2025, Texas Rio Grande Valley expected to join the conference as well. So that would be unheard of. It's kind of a crazy jump, and I think the tweet that Logan sent me said that it would make the most sense for them to go to the Sun Belt based off geographics, and that would put the Sun Belt at 20 teams, which is crazy. We already have the first 3 conferences we've done here, including the Big 12 today, having 14 teams. So 20 teams would be just ridiculous. But there are more and more teams jumping into the FBS, as we saw this year. A couple teams jumping up: Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, and a couple others. Former Florida quarterback Jalen Kitna has entered the transfer portal. Of course, he had allegations of child pornography charges against him. Those were dropped, I believe, and he is now looking for a fresh start somewhere else outside of Florida, the Florida football program. So we'll see if John Kitna's son can find a new home somewhere else. In NFL news, with a retirement, longtime Bengals punter Kevin Huber has retired. Fifth round pick, number 142 overall in 2009 by Cincinnati. Played his entire career with the Bengals from 2009 through 2022. One time Pro Bowler, 216 career games, 1,011 punts, 40.2 net average, 75 long on the punts there, 346 of his 1,011 placed inside the 20. And for a numbers perspective on that, that is 34.2% of his punts getting inside the 20-yard line. And bad news, he got 4 career punts blocked. 4 out of 1,011. Pretty decent, though. 0.4%. So there you go. 0.4% of his punts blocked in his career. The Broncos, number 1 running back Javonte Williams, tore ACL last year. Says he should be cleared for camp, though. So make sure, if you're looking at Javonte in fantasy there, to keep an eye on his status in training camp as we approach fantasy season in mid to late August there. I know I will be happy to have him back on my team. The Panthers, they are inducting defensive end Julius Peppers and wide receiver Musa Muhammad into their Hall of Fame. First additions for Carolina to their Hall of Fame since 2019. Don't remember who those were. Steve Smith, I would have to think. But they will induct those 2 guys on October 29th against the Texans. Peppers, he has the 4th most sacks in NFL history, 159.5. Second most forced fumbles in NFL history with 51. And he is also eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2024. He is the only player to record 100 sacks and 10 interceptions, and the only one with 100 sacks and 4 pick sixes in his career. 3-time first-team All-Pro, member of the 2000s and 2010s All-Decade teams. Played with the Panthers, Bears, and the Packers. I don't remember. I don't think he played for anyone else. And Musa Muhammad, he led the NFL in receptions in 2000 with 102. And he led the NFL in receiving yards, 1,405, and receiving touchdowns, 16. Led both those categories in 2004. That was the Panthers' Super Bowl season. Second in Panthers history to only Steve Smith, Sr., in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time first-team All-Pro. The supplemental draft was held today. 2 players were eligible: Jackson State wide receiver Malachi Weidman and Purdue wide receiver Milton Wright. Neither were selected, unfortunately, for those guys. But good news for them. They are free agents now and can sign with any team instead of the team choosing them. By the way, supplemental draft, in case you didn't know, if you select a player in the supplemental draft, you lose that draft pick the next year. And the last thing here, the Saints running back Alvin Kamara, legal situation kind of clearing up now. He pled guilty to a lesser misdemeanor charge for his alleged role in a 2022 Las Vegas fight. Felony charge is no more. So this now opens up the NFL to discipline him. We'll see what suspension they hand out to Mr. Kamara there. Hopefully not a long one, because I just traded for him in one of my dynasty leagues. What is up, my guy?
Hey, dude, how are you?
Good, man. Just finished the news. So we're about to hop into the Big 12 preview here.
Nice, dude.
unless you had anything to comment on any of the news. I also added in there Alvin Kamara's stuff that just came down.
Oh, I didn't even catch that yet. Did he get suspended?
Not yet, but the NFL is open to suspension now because his legal situation is finally cleared up. He pled guilty to a lesser misdemeanor charge, so no felony charge anymore.
Mm.
But now that he pled guilty to that one, now the NFL can finally do their stuff and figure out how many games. Like I said, hopefully not long. I just traded for him in
Yeah.
Dynasty. But yeah, I talked about the UAC thing that you had sent me. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that or not, and also
Yeah,
Pat
no,
Fitz.
I think it's just really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it seems like honestly either way they might get in, because I mean the CUSA does need kind of to replace some of the teams that they lost to the American. But I think it's just, I think I've seen some conversations on the timeline over the last couple days in regards to college football that, there's kind of a debate about, are there too many FBS teams? That division of FCS and FBS, is there going to be an imbalance of power with too many teams leaving the FCS that maybe aren't ready to take that step? And I think it's a valid question that definitely deserves exploring. I think that maybe the NCAA needs to create a mechanism for when you can switch, um, when you can kind of move up to FBS Division One.
They do.
But
They
yeah, I
have
don't
a
know. I think it's just an interesting conversation.
As far as I know, I mean, I haven't looked at it in a while, but they do have one. They have a formula, as far as I know. I saw it years ago, but yeah, it's like you have to have a certain size stadium. You have to have a certain number of enrollment, um, and that was back when it was uh, Division 1A, Division 1AA. So
Sure.
I don't know if it changed or whatnot when they switched the names, but yeah, I know they used to have one anyways. So, and then the Pat Fitzgerald. Did you did you? I talked
Yeah.
about it, but did you want to say anything about that?
I just, for me, and one of the things that I keep saying is that he either knew, which, is a fireable offense, or he didn't know, which is still a fireable offense because he should have known. So either way, as the head coach, it's when something like that happens, and when something's definitely at least that widespread, it does not sound like it was like an isolated incident. I think
Mhm.
the university said at least 11 current and former players came forward. So I see a lot of people online defending Fitzgerald and saying that, it was just one former player who was jaded, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So yeah, and I mean, the other thing that I just kind of keep thinking about too is like the on-field success shouldn't necessarily come into this at all. Like this is definitely just more a culture thing, and like, but like a lot of people are acting like Northwestern fired their like Nick Saban. Like
Mhm.
obviously Pat Fitzgerald meant a lot to that university, and he's probably their most noted figure in that football program's history, but they haven't been good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they just haven't been that formidable, so it's just, I don't know. I think that it's definitely something that a lot of people have latched on. for different reasons than kind of sports. And it's just, yeah.
Well, they did win like 3 out of 4 West Division championships there. But obviously the West, we know, doesn't ever win the Big Ten.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's head on to the Big 12. Before we talk about the teams, talk about the Big 12 media preseason poll. I don't know like who this 24/7 Sports put this out, I guess. I don't know like who the media is though in this. So though they had Texas with 41 first place votes in first, Kansas State in second with 14 first place votes, Oklahoma in third with 4, Texas Tech in fourth with 4, TCU in fifth with 3, Baylor in sixth, Oklahoma in seventh with 1, UCF in eighth, Kansas in ninth, Iowa State in 10th, BYU in 11th, Houston in 12th, Cincinnati in 13th, and West Virginia in 14th. So just keep that in mind because it's a lot different than what I picked. I'll tell you that. Just like the AAC, I have confidence in some of these AAC teams coming over. So you'll see what I mean. But anyways, we're going to go the same thing that we did with the other two conferences and just roll through them, how they finished last year, and then we'll do the newcomers at the end. 4 new teams, by the way, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston coming over from AAC, BYU coming in as an FBS independent. So starting off with TCU, even though they didn't win the Big 12, Kansas State did, but they finished first in the regular season and had the best record, 13-2. Going to the national championship game, I think they lost to a pretty good team. Just saying. But but they're returning players. They have a lot returning actually from their national championship appearance. Team quarterback Chandler Morris, running back Imani Bailey, tight end Jared Wiley, Big 12 honorable mention. Offensive lineman Andrew Coker was an honorable mention, as was offensive lineman Brandon Coleman. Defensive lineman Dominic Williams, honorable mention. Linebacker Johnny Hodges was defensive newcomer of the year and second team All Big 12. Linebacker Jamoy Hodge, honorable mention. Corner Josh Newton, first teamer. Safety Millard Bradford, honorable mention. Safety Bud Clark, honorable mention. Kicker Griffin Kell, first team. Punter Jordy Sandy, honorable mention as well. They lost a lot too, though. So quarterback Max Duggan to the NFL. He was the offensive player of the year, first team, All Big 12. Running back Kendre Miller to the NFL, first team. Wide receiver Quentin Johnston to the NFL, first team. Wide receiver Darius Davis to the NFL, special teams player of the year, and a first team at kick returner, punt returner. Wide receiver Jordan Hudson transferred. Wide receiver Tate Barber to the NFL, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Alan Ali to the NFL, first team. Offensive lineman Steve Avila to the NFL, first team. Defensive lineman Dylan Horton to the NFL, honorable mention. Linebacker D. Winters in the NFL, first team. And defensive back Travius Hodges Tomlinson to the NFL, first team. And then they got some nice transfers as well, especially mostly on offense. Quarterback Chance Nolan from Oregon State, running back Trey Sanders from Alabama, wide receiver JoJo Early from Alabama, wide receiver J.P. Richardson from Oklahoma State, wide receiver Jalen Robinson from Ole Miss, and defensive lineman Rick D'Abreu from ECU. So, yeah, they got a lot coming back. Hence the fifth place I guess 5th out of 14 is pretty solid in the the media poll there. Schedule wise, or do you want to go, or should I say the schedule?
No, I'll say more after the schedule talk.
All right, I got TCU 8-4, 5-4, in conference. I had them starting 5-0. Win at home against Colorado. I was thinking about getting them a loss because I really do like Deion Sanders this year, but week 1, I'm not sure if they're going to have the continuity there. Week 2, they win at home against Nicholls State. They win at Houston, win at home against SMU, win at home against West Virginia. They lose at Iowa State. That one was kind of, I don't know. I just think that's a trap game in Ames. They win at home against BYU. They lose at Kansas State. Week 9 bye. They win at Texas Tech on a Thursday night. They lose at home against Texas. They win at home against Baylor, and they lose at Oklahoma on a Friday night to end the season.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised that they were voted 5th in the preseason polls that you shared.
I have them
You
7th.
know, I think, what was that?
I have them 7th here.
I mean, I think that they did lose a ton. I mean, and a ton of starters, not just key impact guys. But I still believe that they're going to be a tough team to beat. I think that for me, I still think that they could reach 9 wins. I think they could compete and put themselves in the conversation to reach the conference championship. I think there might be some teams in a better position based on who they have returning. But I still think TCU is going to be a tough out. I think 8 wins is definitely good, but for me, I think that's their floor. I think I could definitely see them getting up to 10 wins.
Yeah. I forgot to put this up just this before we started here, just to show you how vastly different I think of the Big 12 than this media poll. I mean, Cincinnati is the biggest mover. I have them finishing 5th. They had them 13th. So we'll talk about
crazy.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Cincinnati a lot later, but most of the other teams are kind of where I had them. UCF I have a lot higher. Like I said, they're like you. They're skeptical of newcomers into a conference. But I just think some UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU BYU is right at the midpoint there of the conference at 8. But yeah, UCF especially is the one that I have confidence in coming in. Just like I have UTSA winning the AAC. But all right, let's go to Kansas State. I have them finishing 6th here. But returning for them, running back DJ Giddens, honorable mention, wide receiver Phillip Brooks, 2nd team at kick returner, punt returner, tight end Ben Sino, a 1st teamer at fullback, offensive lineman Cooper Beebe, offensive lineman of the year, and 1st teamer, offensive lineman Hayden Gillum and KT Leviston, both honorable mention, linebacker Daniel Green and Austin Moore, both honorable mention, and safety Kobe Savage was a 2nd teamer. Losses, they lost a bunch on both sides. Quarterback Adrian Martinez to the NFL, honorable mention. Running back Deuce Vaughn to the NFL, 2nd team. Wide receiver Malik Knowles to the NFL, 2nd team. Offensive lineman Jalen Clem transferred. Defensive lineman Felix Anudike Uzama to the NFL. He was the defensive player of the year, defensive lineman of the year, and a 1st teamer. Defensive lineman Eli Huggins to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive back Julius Brents to the NFL first team. Defensive back Ikao Boye-Doe to the NFL, honorable mention. And punter Ty Zentner to the NFL, second teamer. They got two key transfers on offense. Running back Trayshawn Ward from Florida State, massive back in the portal there. And then wide receiver Keegan Johnson comes over from Iowa. So a lot stayed, a lot out, and not much in. But it's kind of even, I think. The biggest one is the quarterback, which I didn't see if they still have. I don't remember who their quarterback was after Martinez, but
yeah, Will Howard.
And
it looks like they still have him.
All right.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel okay about my record then. 8-4, just like TCU, but I have them finishing ahead of TCU by conference record, 6-3 in conference play. Week 1, they win at home against SEMO, Southeast Missouri. They win at home against Troy week 2. Then week 3, they lose at Missouri. They lose at home against UCF. Week 5 bye, they win at Oklahoma State on a Friday night. They win at Texas Tech, win at home against TCU, win at home against Houston. They lose at Texas. They win at home against Baylor. They lose the Sunflower Showdown at Kansas just because it's an away game. I think Kansas gets them on that one. And then they win at home against Iowa State to end 8-4.
Yeah, this is another team that I'm still pretty high on going into this year because I really liked what I saw from them last year. And for me, the big thing is the quarterback play. I think Will Howard did an exceptional job coming in when Adrian Martinez went out. That conference championship game was really fun to watch. Him battling it out against Max Duggan. I thought he did a really good job. So yeah, I think Kansas State is definitely going to be another tough out. I think very similar to TCU. I feel like 8 wins is kind of their floor, and I could see them going up to 10.
Yeah. Like I said, I have them finishing 6 there. Not many. I mean, the Kansas game and the UCF game. I'm not sure about the Missouri one to go to Columbia. That's a tough place to play, especially if it's a night game. I don't think it is, but Georgia knows it's not fun to play in Columbia, Missouri at night. God. I don't know how we won that one, but anyways, let's go to the team that in the media poll, by the way, Kansas State second, so they're with you with 14 first place votes in second place. First place, this is where me and the media agree wholeheartedly. Texas is the next team here. Sark going into his third year, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
third year at Texas. They have a ton returning, and that's kind of why I think many people, including myself, like them this year. Quarterback Quinn Ewers, honorable mention. Running back Keelan Robinson, honorable mention. Wide receiver Xavier Worthy, second team. Wide receiver Jordan Whittington, honorable mention. Tight end Jatavian Sanders, first team. Offensive lineman Kelvin Banks Jr., second team. Offensive lineman Christian Jones, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Tavondre Sweat, honorable mention. Edge rusher Baron Sorrell, honorable mention. Linebacker Jalen Ford, first team. Defensive backs Jade Barron, Jaron Thompson, and Ryan Watts, all honorable mention. And kicker Bert Auburn, honorable mention as well. Losses, not terrible. One major one, obviously. Quarterback Hudson Card transferred out. Running back Bijan Robinson to the NFL first team. Running back Johnson, NFL honorable mention. Wide receiver Brennan Thompson transferred, as did offensive lineman Junior Angelau and Logan Parr. Defensive lineman Keandre Coburn to the NFL second team. Defensive lineman Moro Ojimo to the NFL honorable mention, and linebacker DeMarvion Overshone to the NFL first team. They got some solid transfers, though. All four of these guys I like. Wide receiver Adonai Mitchell from Georgia. Defensive lineman Trill Carter from Minnesota. Safety Jalen Catalon from Arkansas. And punter Ryan Sanborn from Stanford. All excellent players coming to the Longhorns this season.
Yeah. Yep. This is as high as I've been on Texas in really a long time. Even last year, I felt like they got overhyped. But I think this year, with how many guys they're returning, another year progressing under Sark's system, I really do believe sky's the limit for Texas. They are my favorite to come out of the Big 12. And the big thing for me is just it's all going to turn on if Quinn Ewers can kind of show why he was that number one recruit, that number one QB coming out. But he's in a very good position to do that. I mean, this might be the best wide receiver core outside of Ohio State in the nation. You got Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittingham coming back, and then them adding A.D. Mitchell in the transfer portal was huge. So yeah, I mean, I really like this offense. Kind of like all Big 12 teams, it's going to be, can the defense do enough? But I am very high on Texas this year.
Yeah, how about 11-1 high? 9-0 conference record. Win at home against Rice. At Alabama is their only loss. They're not going to win in Tuscaloosa. Win at home against Wyoming. Win at Baylor. Win at home against Kansas. At home against Oklahoma. That's at the Cotton Bowl. Week 7 bye at Houston. At home against BYU. At home against Kansas State. At TCU. At Iowa State. At home against Texas Tech on a Friday night to end the season. Really, it's the thing is like it's the out. They had Bam on the ropes last year before Quinn Ewers got injured, but it's in Tuscaloosa. That's why I'm not giving them a win.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think 11-1 is a realistic record prediction, and again, that's saying it as somebody who has kind of not followed the hype with Texas in kind of recent years. I think every year they're one of those teams that consistently gets overhyped in the polls. But I like the consistency and the consistent improvement that I've seen in Sark's teams. I think that they took a good step last year. And again, with how many guys they have returning this year and the key additions they made in the portal, I think they can definitely get it
done. Let's head on to another Texas team here, Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. They have also quite a bit returning, and it's kind of surprising that the media, they put them all the way up at 4th with 4 first-place votes. And the returners here, quarterback Baron Morton, honorable mention. Wide receiver Jaron Bradley and Miles Price, honorable mentions. Tight end Henry Teeter, honorable mention at fullback. Uh, offensive lineman Landon Peterson and Dennis Wilburn, honorable mentions. Defensive lineman Tony Bradford Jr. and Jalen Hutchings, honorable mention. Outside linebacker Joseph Adadire, honorable mention. Defensive back Malik Dunlap, second team. Defensive back Rashad Williams, honorable mention. Punter Austin McNamara, honorable mention. Losses, not a lot of production lost, or at least all conference players, anyways. Quarterback Donovan Smith transferred. Defensive lineman Tyree Wilson to the NFL first team. Safety Reggie Pearson Jr. transferred. Safety Krishan Merriweather to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive back Marquise Waters to the NFL, honorable mention. And kicker Trey Wolf to the NFL, honorable mention as well. And couple transfers in. Offensive lineman Rusty Stats from Western Kentucky. Defensive lineman Steve Linton from Syracuse, and safety CJ Baskerville from San Diego State. So yeah, I can see why they would like Texas Tech a lot, but I'm not even close to that high on them.
Yeah. For me, Texas Tech is one of those teams where, they are a tough out. There are games where, they'll hang with you, kind of be upset city a little bit, but they always kind of hover around that 500 mark. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with them this year.
Yeah. And I think their schedule, they play a lot of the tougher teams in the conference as well. So 5-7, 3-6 in conference is where I have them at. They win at Wyoming, but they lose at home against Oregon. Week 2, week 3, they win at home against Tarleton State. They win at Virginia. That one I wasn't so sure about. If I didn't think West Virginia was so bad, going to Morgantown is also another tough place to play. But West Virginia is so bad this year. I think so. I think Texas Tech can get that one. They win at home against Houston, win at Baylor. They lose at home against Kansas State, and this is where they lose out because they're feeling good at 5-1, but then they faced the tough teams down the stretch the second half of the year. Lose at home against Kansas State. They lose at BYU, and the reason for that again, is at Provo. Provo, Utah is a tough place to play, especially at night. BYU, that's a night game. If that's a night game and BYU is wearing their black jerseys, it's over. it is over. So, so that's why I have them losing that one. They have week 9 bye. They win at home against TCU they lose at home against TCU on a Thursday night. They lose at Kansas. They lose at home against UCF, and they lose at Texas on a Friday night to end the year. So yeah, 5-7. We'll see who's right. Media. My stuff will be posted later. It'll be out there for the public to see who's right. Anyways, let's go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, not Oklahoma. Oklahoma State. So the Cowboys, it was something else this offseason to say. I didn't understand what happened. Like, they lost so many players in the transfer portal. Like, I don't know if they were just like finally done like with Gundy or what, but they lost a ton of production in the transfer portal and to the NFL. They got a bunch of transfers though, which we'll talk about, but returning running back Jaden Nixon, honorable mention as a kick returner, punt returner. Fullback Jake Schultz, honorable mention. Wide receiver Brennan Presley, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Jake Springfield, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Colin Oliver, second team. Safety Kendall Daniels was the defensive freshman of the year and a second teamer, so that's a bright spot. But here's all the losses. Quarterback Spencer Sanders transferred, honorable mention. Running back Dominic Richardson transferred. Wide receiver John Paul Richardson, or JP as they have him on the TCU roster, transferred. Defensive lineman Brock Martin to the NFL, second team. Defensive lineman Tyler Lacey to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Trace Ford transferred. Linebacker Mason Cobb transferred, second teamer. Defensive back Jason Taylor, the second to the NFL, first team. Defensive back Jabbar Muhammad transferred, honorable mention. Defensive back Thomas Harper transferred. Kicker Tanner Brown to the NFL, second team. So the guys they got to replace, they did get some of these guys. I really did like what they did getting these transfers, though. Quarterback Alan Bowman comes in from Michigan. Running back Elijah Collins from Michigan State, I think, was their best transfer that they got. Great running back from MSU. Wide receiver Dejon Stribling from Washington State. Wide receiver Arlen Bruce IV from Iowa. Wide receiver Leon Johnson III from George Fox, which I didn't even know was a school until I looked his stats up, and he'll play. He will play. He's big body, 6'3", 200 something. Offensive lineman Dalton Cooper from Texas State. Defensive lineman Anthony Goodlow and linebacker Justin Wright coming over from Tulsa. Two good defensive players. Goodlow, the better of the two. But yeah, it was a lot of in and out for Oklahoma State this year. Is crazy. The amount of transfers.
Yeah. And that turnover is a big reason why I'm pretty low on them this year. I mean, it's just I'm trying to go through the roster here, but especially at the quarterback position, they look very inexperienced. And I saw a lot of people calling for Spencer Sanders' head a little bit last year when they were struggling, but it's like careful what you wish for, because
right.
As of right now, and I saw it firsthand watching the guaranteed rate poll against Wisconsin. The quarterback play was less than stellar. I can tell you that. So, yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a tough year for OSU and what is going to be a tougher Big 12 than they've faced before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Bowman at least gives them a veteran presence. Didn't play at all at Michigan, but was a 2 or 3 year starter at Texas Tech before that. Had some really solid years there. So I think at least he'll give them some veteran leadership there. And then I believe Gundy's son is still on the team, Gunnar Gundy. That he played a little bit last year as well. So I think he would be the backup as far as I know. But yeah, I have them mediocre, 6-6, 3-6, conference record. They start out good, 4-0. They win at home against Central Arkansas. They win at Arizona State. They win at home against South Alabama. Then they win at Iowa State. Week 5 bye, and it does not go well after that. Lose at home against Kansas State on a Friday. They lose at home against Kansas. They win at West Virginia. They lose at home against Cincinnati. Lose at home against Oklahoma. Lose at UCF. They win at Houston. And they lose at home against the BYU. So, yeah. But they get a bowl berth, 6-6. There's something, anyways, for the Cowboys fans out there. Let's head to Baylor here. They lost a ton, but some returners. Quarterback Blake Shapen honorable mention. Running back Richard Reese was the offensive freshman of the year in an honorable mention selection. Wide receiver Monterey Baldwin, honorable mention. Wide receiver Hal Presley, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Gabe Hall, honorable mention. Linebacker Matt Jones, honorable mention. And safety Devin Lemire, honorable mention. And here comes the laundry list of losses. Quarterback Kyron Drones transferred, as did running back Craig Williams. Wide receiver Gavin Holmes to the NFL. He was an honorable mention, kick returner, punt returner. Tight end Ben Sims to the NFL, honorable mention. Offensive lineman Jacob Gall and Connor Galvin to the NFL, both second team. Offensive lineman Micah Mazkua transferred. He's an honorable mention. Offensive lineman Grant Miller to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Siaki Ika to the NFL, first team. Defensive lineman Dylan Doyle to the NFL. He was a second teamer at both fullback and linebacker. Safety Al Walcott transferred, honorable mention. Kicker John Mayers to the NFL, honorable mention. And kicker Noah Rauschenberg transferred. Just a couple transfers in. Running back Dominic Richardson from Oklahoma State, tight end Jake Roberts from North Texas, and offensive lineman Clark Barrington from BYU. So this was an imbalanced scale here in terms of in and out, big time. So that's why I have Baylor finishing 12th.
Yeah. For me, I have them finishing kind of slightly above average, probably somewhere in the 7 and 5 range. Just because I think Dave Aranda is a pretty good head coach, and I do think he's going to be able to kind of piece together that turnover. But yeah, I think it's just I think it's going to be hard for Baylor in a much more improved Big 12 to kind of fight their way up the ladder.
Yeah, and the big thing for me, the weird thing is I have them finishing 12th, right? But I have them 5 and 7, 3 and 6. Like from BYU on, from BYU to Baylor, I would say those 5 teams, they're all around the 500, 5 and 7 area. I think BYU, Oklahoma State, I have 6 and 6, and Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, or Baylor, all 5 and 7. So it's not like they're bad records; like they're right there. But it's just like they have so many teams and so many good teams at the top that it's hard to finish high in the conference, even with a decent record. But yeah, 5 and 7, 3 and 6 conference record. They win at home against Texas State. They lose at home against Utah. They win at home against LIU. They lose at home against Texas. They lose at UCF. They lose at home against Texas Tech. Week 7 bye. Lose at Cincinnati. Win at home against Iowa State. Win at home against Houston. Lose at Kansas State. Lose at TCU. And win at home against West Virginia. But yeah, 5 and 7. They can probably do better than that. Blake Shapen has been decent, and Richard Reese is their best player. I think that they have. So we'll see if Dom Richardson takes any snaps from him, though. Okay, let's go to the Sooners here. I like them. I like them a lot. I didn't do the voice. I should have done the voice for that one. But anyways, not whatever. Returning quarterback Dylan Gabriel, offensive newcomer of the year, an honorable mention. Offensive lineman Andrew Ream, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Ethan Downs, second team. Linebacker Danny Stutzman, honorable mention. Defensive back Billy Bowman Jr., honorable mention. they're another team that lost quite a bit. Running back Eric Gray to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Marvin Mims Jr. to the NFL, first team. Wide receiver Theo Weiss transferred. Tight end Braden Willis to the NFL, second team. Offensive lineman Anton Harrison to the NFL, first team. Defensive lineman Corey Roberson transferred. Linebacker David Ugwogbu transferred. He was an honorable mention. Defensive back CJ Colden to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive back Jaden Davis transferred. And punter Michael Turk to the NFL, first teamer. Some good transfers, though, especially defensively. Wide receiver Brennan Thompson from Texas. Wide receiver Andrell Anthony from Michigan. Tight end Austin Stogner comes home after a year at South Carolina. Offensive lineman Walter Rouse from Stanford. Defensive back Trace Ford from Oklahoma State. Defensive lineman Rondell Bothroyd from Wake Forest. Defensive back Reggie Pearson Jr. from Texas Tech. And punter Luke Elzinga from Central Michigan. I'm really excited for Brett Venables' squad this year.
Yeah. Yep. I'm pretty high on them too. And for me, it comes down to quarterback Dylan Gabriel and kind of his experience. I think the key is going to be if they can replace some of the talent that they lost on offense. But Oklahoma is one of those schools that they recruit very well on that side of the ball. So I have no doubt that they'll have some guys coming up who are going to be able to do a lot with Dylan Gabriel at the helm. So I'm pretty high on them.
Yeah, they replaced the four offensive guys that they got slotted into the four of the five offensive guys that they lost. It comes down to running back. They didn't get a transfer running back, but they have good backs usually. Obviously, Thompson and Anthony aren't Marvin Mims, at least not yet. So that's the talent there difference. But I think Walter Rouse is a good player, good tackle from Stanford. So I have them finishing second there, 10-2, 7-2 conference record. They win at home against Arkansas State, win at home against SMU. They win at Tulsa. They win at Cincinnati. They win at home against Iowa State. They lose at Texas, which is the Cotton Bowl Red River Showdown. Not going to be as bad as last year, where Texas absolutely just killed them. But they do lose that one again. Bye week 7, they win at home against UCF. They lose at Kansas. They win at Oklahoma State. They win at home against West Virginia, win at BYU, and then they win at home against TCU in Friday night matchup.
Yeah. I have them finishing very similar. I think that they're going to finish second or third in the conference. I think they'll probably only be a 2 or 3 loss team. I'm thinking somewhere in the realm of 10-2, 10-3-ish, something like that.
Yeah, probably gonna fight for one of the New Year's 6 spots, depending on what happens elsewhere. But yeah, I like him, and like you said, Dylan Gabriel is the key. I'm super high on Dylan Gabriel. This offense should be explosive once again, like Oklahoma usually is. But not going to get past Texas. To Kansas, my third place team. They also are banking on another good season from a quarterback. Quarterback Jalen Daniels returns, second team all conference. Running back Devin Neal was an honorable mention. Tight end Mason Fairchild, second team. Offensive lineman Mike Nowitzki, second team. Offensive lineman Dominic Puny, honorable mention. That's an interesting last name for an offensive lineman, but I don't think there's anything puny about him, probably. Don't have his numbers up on how much he weighs, but corner Kobe Bryant, first team. Yes, there is another Kobe Bryant, just like there's one in the NFL already, and now we got another corner that's named Kobe Bryant. It's spelled differently though. So, safety Kenny Logan Jr. honorable mention. They didn't lose a lot. They did barely anything. Offensive lineman Earl Bostic Jr. to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Lonnie Phelps to the NFL, second teamer. That's it. They really didn't lose much. And then transfers, not big names, but they got some decent guys. Running back Dylan McDuffie from Georgia Tech and kicker Seth Keller from Texas State comes over. So the Jayhawks, yeah, I think they're going to be pretty solid. Lance Leopold, another season for him at the helm. 9-3, 6-3 conference record. They win at home against Missouri State on a Friday night. They go back-to-back Friday night games to start the year. Missouri State, Illinois, both at home. Illinois, I was thinking about giving them a loss there, but because it's at home, I gave them the win. They win at Nevada, week 3. They win at home against BYU. Then they lose at Texas. They lose at home against UCF. They win at Oklahoma State. They win week 8 bye. They win at home against Oklahoma, upset there. Again, it's a home game against a tough team. They'll be ready for that one. They win at Iowa State. They win at home against Texas Tech. Win at home against Kansas State. Sunflower Showdown there. And then they lose at Cincinnati. Kind of an upset there as well to finish 9-3.
Yeah, I really like that prediction for them. And that's exactly kind of where I'm at for them. I love Lance Leopold, UW Whitewater, great. And yeah, and a big thing for me, this comes down to, much like we talked about for Texas and Oklahoma, it's who's at quarterback. And I think you can make the argument that Jalen Daniels is the best quarterback in the Big 12. Certainly was super dynamic last year. Yeah, and I mean, I think if he stays healthy, I think the Jayhawks are going to be a tough team to beat.
Yeah, well, that media poll that I mentioned, they don't like him. 9th place is where they had him. So, yeah, that's interesting. They have Baylor really high in 6th, but I don't know who voted for Oklahoma State as a first place vote. We'll talk about them. We already did. I mean, 7th place for them. I can't see that. I mean, I got them 9th, which was very nice of me to put them in 9th, I think. But anyways, let's move on to what I and the media, and I would assume you as well, have as the worst team in the Big 12. The West Virginia Mountaineers. Returning, running back C.J. Donaldson Jr., honorable mention. Offensive lineman Zach Frazier, first teamer. Yes, West Virginia, surprise. I don't know how they got a first team all conference last year. Offensive lineman Wyatt Millam, honorable mention, and linebacker Lee Pogba, honorable mention as well. They lost quite a bit this offseason. Quarterback JT Daniels transferred. Running back Tony Mathis transferred. Wide receiver Bryce Ford Wheaton to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Sam Jones to the NFL, honorable mention. Wide receiver Caden Prather transferred. Defensive lineman Dante Stills to the NFL, first team. Defensive lineman Jordan Jefferson transferred, honorable mention. Defensive back Jasir Cox to the NFL, honorable mention. And corner Charles Woods transferred as well. They got two good wide receivers, though, for whoever's playing quarterback. Wide receiver Devin Carter comes in from NC State. Wide receiver Jashawn Polk from Kent State. And they got corner Montre Miller from Kent as well. But we always talk about quarterbacks, and I have no clue who he's even playing for West Virginia.
Yeah, that's always tough when that happens. I don't know enough about West Virginia to definitively say that they're going to finish last, but they're definitely one of the teams in the mix. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think just the QB position alone is tough, and I think that their non-conference schedule is a little rough. At Penn State, game against Pitt, and look, I love it when teams do the kind of they keep some of those non-conference rivalries or games that are close to rivalries. I love it when teams do that, but it's gonna be tough. You're gonna face an uphill battle. And I don't think I like them as favorites in either of those games. And like I said, the Big 12's much tougher this year, so it's going to be a tough road ahead.
So they have 5 quarterbacks on their roster. None of them I have heard about. Garrett Green would seem to be the starter. He's the elder statesman in the group. He's a junior. And then Jackson Christ is a redshirt sophomore. They have 2 redshirt freshmen, Scott Keene and Nico Martial, and then a true freshman, Sean Boyle. Again, I have not ever heard of any of these guys, so I have no clue which one it actually is going to be. Like I said, I would lean toward Garrett Green because he's the most experienced of the 5 in terms of years anyways. So yeah. And the worst team gets the worst record, obviously, 2-10. I was nice. I gave them a 1-8 conference record. I gave them a conference win. But yeah, the non-conference is not nice. They lose at Penn State. They win against Duquesne. They lose at home against Pitt. Originally, I had that as a win, but then I was like, Pitt's probably going to be better. I forget who did Pitt who did they have coming in at QB again?
Keaton Slovis is still there, right? Or did he transfer out?
No, he transferred to BYU, which we'll talk about.
Oh, that's right.
They got oh yeah, they got Dracovic, that's right, from Boston College. And they got Christian Veilleux from Penn State too. So they're set at quarterback. Yeah, but yeah, I think even though that's a home game, I think Pitt's going to be the better team anyways. So they lose that one, lose at home against Texas Tech, lose at TCU, week 6 bye. They lose at Houston on a Thursday night, lose at home against Oklahoma State, lose at UCF. They win at home against BYU because it's in Morgantown. They lose at Oklahoma. They lose at home against Cincinnati, and they lose at Baylor. 2-10 for the Mountaineers. Not pretty. Okay. Moving on to the Cyclones, Iowa State here. Matt Campbell's crew. They kind of like a lot of the other teams lost a bunch to the NFL transfers, but returning for them, quarterback Hunter Deckers, honorable mention. Defensive, they have Hunter Deckers and 5 defensive backs returning. That's it in terms of all conference players, anyways. Defensive back TJ Tampa, second teamer, and then defensive backs Jeremiah Cooper, Bo Freiler, and Miles Purchase, all honorable mentions. Losses: fullback Jared Roos to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson to the NFL, first team. offensive lineman Trevor Downing to the NFL, second team. Defensive lineman Will McDonald, the fourth to the NFL, first team. Linebacker Colby Reeder to the NFL, honorable mention. Linebacker Orion Vance to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive back Anthony Johnson Jr. to the NFL, second team. And defensive back MJ Anderson to the NFL, honorable mention. Not a lot coming in for them. Three defensive players, linebacker Ryan Davis from Georgia, corner DeCorian Patterson from Mid-Tennessee, and safety Jaire Wilson from ECU, which I think he's going to be a stud, I think, for Iowa State on the back end. But other than that, it's not that great.
Yeah. I mean, I think very highly of Matt Campbell, what he's been able to do at Iowa State.
I screwed up on the transfers. I always do that because the printer at home here double-sided. So, anyways, they didn't get any they didn't get any key transfers. No key transfers for Iowa State.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think they're a team that they'll be a tough out. I think that they'll win some that maybe they're underdogs from, and they'll lose some maybe where they're favorites. I think I've got them a little under 500 just because of how difficult the conference is going to be this year.
Yeah, I'm right there. I have them 4 games under 500, 4-8, 2-7 conference record. They win at home against Northern Iowa, which I'm just saying that's not a guarantee. UNI is a tough out, especially when they play that, intrastate team. They like to go to Iowa and to Iowa State and beat them if they can. So I'm not so sure that UNI doesn't win that one, but I gave the Cyclones the win for now. Then another interstate matchup. They lose at home against Iowa. Again, Iowa doesn't have an offense, but they still have a defense. So that's how they'll win that one, like usual. They win at Ohio. They win at home against Oklahoma State. They lose at Oklahoma, lose at home against TCU, lose at Cincinnati. Week 8 bye. They win at Baylor. They lose at home against Kansas, lose at BYU, lose at home against Texas, lose at Kansas State. Second half is rough. But yeah, 4-8, I think, is decent for them. Okay, that is all the incumbent Big 12 teams. Now let's talk about the newcomers. The newcomer I am the most high on, the UCF Knights. Because, again, quarterback continuity. Quarterback John Rice Plumlee returns. Guard Lokahi Paole, first team All AAC. Defensive tackle Ricky Barber, first team. Defensive end Tremon Morris Brash, first team. Linebacker Jason Johnson, first team. This is a team that finished second in the AAC last year. Losses, quarterback Mikey Keene transferred. Running back Isaiah Bowser to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Ryan O'Keefe transferred, second team. Wide receiver Joey Gatewood transferred. Offensive tackle Ryan Swoboda to the NFL, first team. Guard Sam Jackson to the NFL, second team. And center Matt Lee transferred, second team. They got some decent transfers, though. Quarterback Timmy McClain comes in from USF. Wide receiver Trent Whittemore from Florida. And wide receiver Corey Gamage from Marshall. Offensive lineman Bula Schmidt from Fresno State. Linebacker Ryan Davis from Georgia. Corner DeCorian Patterson from Mid-Tennessee. Safety Jaire Wilson from ECU. Those guys went to UCF, not Iowa State. But yeah, the Corey Gamage thing, I think, was paramount with the loss of Ryan O'Keefe. I think that was a big hole on the outside, but Gamage pretty dynamic at Marshall. So I think that's almost an even swap. I think O'Keefe's still the better player. but Gamage should do just fine. And then, like I said, Jaire Wilson should be excellent for the Knights on the back end.
Yeah, I'm right with you right there. I think that of the new teams coming in, I think UCF is best poised. Just like because you said the QB continuity and kind of just the veteran presence they're returning across the board. I like the consistency there, and I think that they're going to be able to kind of sharpen their elbows a bit and kind of make a mark in this new Big 12.
Yeah, and Gus has a Big 12 offense already. So, and I think they're actually going to grade out as one of the better defenses, with the guys that they have returning and the guys they added. UCF though 9-3, 6-3 conference record, 4th place for me. The media has them in 8th. But they win at home against Kent State on a Thursday night, week 1. Week 2 is a tough one. I was thinking about giving them a loss, going to Boise on the blue turf. But I gave them a win. That should be a good game, possibly. They win at home against Villanova. They lose at Kansas State. They win at home against Baylor, lose at Kansas. They lose at Oklahoma. They win at home against West Virginia, win at Cincinnati, win at home against Oklahoma State, and they win at Texas Tech. They win at home against Houston. They avoid Texas. Lucky for them in their first season in the Big 12. They're never going to have to play Texas. So that's the big win for UCF and why they're 9-3. Is that right where you had them? Or
yeah, yep, I have them right around there. I have them around like 8-4. Okay. I think 7-5 is probably the floor, and I think 9-3 is probably my ceiling for them.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go to the team that I mentioned. I differ the most with that media poll. Cincinnati, they have them at 13th, second to last in the conference. I have them 5th. Now, this is probably because the quarterback, which we'll talk about in a second. But returning for the Bearcats, defensive end Jawan Briggs, first team All-AAC. Defensive lineman Dante Corleone, first team. And punter Mason Fletcher was the special teams player of the year in the AAC and also a first team All-Conference. That's it. That's all their all-conference returners. They lost a lot from their third place AAC finishing team. Quarterback Ben Bryant transferred. Wide receiver Tyler Scott to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Nick Mardner transferred. Tight end Josh Wiley to the NFL, first team. Offensive tackle James Tunstall to the NFL, second team. Offensive tackle Joe Huber transferred, honorable mention. Guard Dylan O'Quinn to the NFL, honorable mention. Defensive lineman Noah Potter transferred. Linebacker Ivan Pace Jr. to the NFL. He was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year and first teamer. Corner Jaquan Shepard transferred, first team. Corner Arquan Bush to the NFL, honorable mention. Safety Javon Hicks to the NFL, second team. Kicker Ryan Coe transferred, second team. But they got some guys. They got some decent additions here, especially quarterback Emory Jones coming over from Arizona State, so he'll be the starter, I think. Wide receiver Xavier Henderson from Florida. Wide receiver Braden Smith from Louisville. Tight end Joey Belgian from Western Kentucky. Offensive lineman Trevor Radosevich from Penn. Defensive lineman Daniel Gerzeziak from Utah State. And defensive back George Udo from BYU. I think I'm pretty much just banking on Luke Fickell figuring it out. That's the big thing. I think he can work with Emory Jones and make him into something.
Well, Fickell's not there anymore. That's my big thing.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Now they got, I think, who was it? I think it was the Louisville head coach. That,
Scott Satterfield.
yeah, I think. It was either that or the Purdue coach. I forget who it
Yeah,
was.
Scott Satterfield.
Yeah. But for me, there's just too much turnover in this team. Yeah, and it's just going to be tough. Now, their conference schedule, it's a little easier because, like you mentioned with, I forget who the other team was, but they don't have to face Texas, which is going to be nice. But it's still a tougher conference, leap and play, losing that many guys, and obviously your head coach. It's gonna be tough. I think tough season for the Bearcats.
Well, I have 9-3, so 9-3, 6-3 conference record. Pretty much because they play all the lower teams that I have, almost all of them. So week 1 they win at home against Eastern Kentucky. They win at Pitt. They win at home against Miami, Ohio. They lose at home against Oklahoma. They win at BYU on a Friday night. I should probably have that one as a loss after I hyped up Provo at night. And even worse, it's on an off day on a Friday instead of a Saturday. Week 6 bye. They win at home against Iowa State. They win at home against Baylor. They win at Oklahoma State. They lose at home against UCF. They win at Houston. They win at West Virginia, and they lose at home against Kansas. So that's the thing, though. With the schedule, they don't play a lot of the teams that I have to be really good. I had them losing to all the teams that I have that are really good: Oklahoma, UCF, and Kansas. That's banking on Emory Jones, though, who has not worked out at 2 schools already. But hey, Scott Satterfield, he, I believe, is he the head coach when Lamar was there? Trying to see when he was at Louisville. No, he was not. He was still at App State when Lamar got drafted in 2018. So, anyways, still, I think he did a good job at Louisville, and 76-48 career record, 4-1 in bowl games. That's pretty crazy. But I mean, his 4 years at Louisville, 8-5, 4-7, 6-7, and 7-5. Not the greatest. 25-24. And then went 1-1 in bowl games there. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'm completely wrong about Cincinnati, but oh well. All right, let's go to the final AAC team coming over here. The Houston Cougars. Just one all-conference guy returning. Offensive lineman Patrick Paul, first team. They lost a bunch, especially on the offense. Quarterback Clayton Tune to the NFL, first team. Running back Alton McCaskill transferred. Wide receiver Nathaniel Dell to the NFL, first team. Offensive lineman Cameron Johnson transferred, first teamer. Defensive lineman DeAnthony Jones to the NFL, first team. Corner Art Green to the NFL, second team. Safety Javarius Owens to the NFL, second team. And defensive back Jace Rogers to the NFL. He was an honorable mention return specialist. They got some transfers though. Some guys I actually really like. Quarterback Donovan Smith from Texas Tech, running back Tony Mathis from West Virginia, wide receiver Joshua Cobbs from Wyoming, offensive lineman Max Baines from Akron, linebacker Ish Harris from Texas A&M, linebacker David Ugwogbu from Oklahoma, and corner Malik Fleming from ECU. But yeah, the biggest issue is the Clayton Tune, McCaskill, and Tank Dell thing. Those three alone on the offense were just massive losses. So don't think it's going to look anything like they had last year.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to look like a very different Houston team, in my opinion, because of everything they lost on the offensive side of the ball. Now, yeah, the Big 12 doesn't have the greatest defenses, but you need to have the offense to keep up with some of these high flying teams. And I just think Houston's going to struggle in that regard. They're one of the teams that I'm lower on in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that they're going to kind of struggle here in their first year in the Big 12.
Yeah, that's one. This is one team that the media and I actually agree on. 12th, and theirs I have them 10th. 5-7, 3-6 conference record for the Cougars. They lose at home against UTSA week 1. They win at Rice week 2. They lose at home against TCU. Win at home against Sam Houston State. That's another FCS game where I'm not so sure that Houston might lose that one, just because of how good Sam Houston is. They win at Texas Tech. Week 6 bye. They win at home against West Virginia on a Thursday night. They win. They lose at home against Texas. Lose at Kansas State. Lose at Baylor. Lose at home against Cincinnati. Win at home against Oklahoma State. They lose at UCF. With their bowl eligibility on the line, they do not get it done in the bounce house. Yeah, that second half is rough. Maybe they can squeak one out against Baylor. Who knows? All right. Time to head on to the last one. Last team here, the last newcomer, BYU, coming over as an FBS independent. And so I got these first team, or I got this all independent list from College Football Network, since the AP doesn't put out a all independent team. But returning, they do have quite a bit coming back. Wide receiver Keanu Hill, first team all independent. Wide receiver Cody Epps, second team. Wide receiver Hobbs Nyberg, second team as a punt returner. Tight end Isaac Rex, second team. Offensive tackle Kingsley Sua Matea. First team center Connor Pay, first team. Linebacker Max Tooley, second team. He's one of my favorite players. And punter Ryan Reckow, punter of the year and first teamer. Losses: quarterback Jaron Hall to the NFL. He was the offensive player of the year, quarterback of the year, and first team all independent. Running back Christopher Brooks to the NFL, second team. Wide receiver Puka Nasua, wide receiver of the year and first teamer. Offensive tackle Blake Freeland, offensive lineman of the year and first team. Offensive lineman Clark Barrington transferred, as did linebacker Keenan Peely and safety George Udo. Coming in, though, I really like what they did in the transfer portal. Quarterback Keaton Slovis from Pitt, running back Aiden Robbins from UNLV, wide receiver Darius Lassiter from Eastern Michigan, offensive lineman Paul Maley from Utah, defensive lineman Jackson Cravens from Boise State, and linebacker AJ Fongfachan from Utah State. That guy, him and Max Tooley are going to be one of the best linebacker duos in the country this year. I'm just telling you right now. I absolutely love those two guys together. And I don't think a lot of people know Aiden Robbins from UNLV, but he's very explosive there for the Rebels last year. It's just, can Keaton Slovis work? I think that's the biggest thing with that offense. They have all the receivers coming back mostly.
Yep, totally agree, and that's the big question mark for me, and a little why I'm kind of lower on them. And maybe I'll say more after we go through the record because to me they do have a really tough schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Kalani Sitake's crew, which another man I love, Kalani Sitake is
Yes,
fantastic.
yes, sir. Can't say enough about him.
Yeah. So I'm 6-6, 4-5 conference record. The week 1 they win at home against Sam Houston State, win at home against Southern Utah. They lose at Arkansas, lose at Kansas. They lose at home against Cincinnati on a Friday night. Week 6 bye, they lose at TCU. They win at home against Texas Tech. They lose at Texas. They win at West Virginia. They win at home against Iowa State. They lose at home against Oklahoma, and they win at Oklahoma State. So they have to face most of the big boys. Texas, Oklahoma, TCU, and Kansas all on the schedule. Oh, yeah, and also you got to go to Arkansas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I am 6-6, though. I think that's a decent year, your first season in the conference.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you with that for the reasons you just outlined. That is a tough away game against Arkansas, and then they really did draw the short end of the stick with that conference schedule. So it's going to be tough. I mean, if Keaton Slovis kind of takes a step, I think they could maybe steal some of those games that we highlighted. But it's going to be tough.
Yeah. So, getting all my records back together here, I'll recap the conference. So I have Texas winning the conference at 11-1. Oklahoma in second at 10-2. Cincinnati or Kansas in third at 9-3. Cincinnati in fourth, or UCF in fourth at 9-3 as well. Losing my voice, but Cincinnati in fifth at 9-3. Kansas State in sixth at 8-4. TCU in seventh at 8-4. BYU in eighth, 6-6. Oklahoma State in ninth, 6-6. Houston in 10th at 5-7. I have Texas Tech in 11th at 5-7. Baylor in 12th, 5-7. Iowa State in 13th at 4-8. And the West Virginia Mountaineers finishing up at 2-10. So much different than this media poll. Like I said, Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, UCF, Kansas, Iowa State, BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, West Virginia. That's how they have it anyways. We'll see who wins. But that is the show for today. Thank y'all for watching. Don't next Tuesday, I will be back in Milwaukee. So yeah. Off-season week 3, we'll talk all the college football, NFL news, and then we'll continue our conference preview series with Conference USA. We're doing Big Ten on Friday this week. do CUSA, revamped CUSA next week. And then don't forget to follow us on all our social media at FAA Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, FAA_bets as well. FAApodcast.com is our website. You can check us out here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and TikTok at Football Addicts Anon on there. Thank you, Logan, and we'll see you back on Friday.
Yes, sir. Peace.